time in the past few days. And as I look through the window, marveling at the trees and wondering about the onset of spring, I suddenly feel lonely. Lonely because, as much as I'm enjoying the sight in front of me, I cannot seem to think of a single person with whom I could share this with. And it's not just the fleeting moments of happiness, but also of the darker days. Of days when I'm confused, hazed, worried, or maybe even excited. It's everything at once. But then I also remind myself that I do have friends. I have people that I can count on during the hardest of times. I have a loving family that is always a steady support to me. Then why do I still feel this hurtful, deep pang of loneliness? Is it because I'm ungrateful of what I have already? Or is it because I'm greedy and want more? I mean, is loneliness always just a sum of either of these two extremes? I'm not really sure. Sometimes I feel it all depends on the perspective of how I look at, or rather choose to look at things in a certain way. Like when I'm sad or hurting, it feels as if the entire universe is working against me. And the more I dwell into this, the more I'm digging deeper into the dark void. And then there are moments when I feel that the world around me is just tailor made for me. As if every step that I take, every event that occurs, all happens just to conspire happiness for me. So, is loneliness then just a projection of my own emotions onto the real world? And even if it is, then aren't all my feelings valid in themselves? Thus making the whole idea of loneliness even more vague than it already was. Truth is, no matter what explanation I conjure up, I am lonely in many ways. And I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. I feel the only mistake, if at all there has to be a mistake, is to think of loneliness as some sort of defeat, some form of resignation from happiness itself. And the view in front of me kind of reminded me of a silly but poignant analogy I'd made about the sun and its solar system. What I feel like during the worst times of loneliness is like a celestial rock just floating aimlessly across space, whereas I just want to be part of the sun's orbit, making the same revolutions around it while moving along a tiny part of the universe. It's a vast space out there, and while we're all lonely in our own different way and in our own different time, I just want to have the sense of belongingness. No matter how insignificant the larger scheme of all things may be, but also in its microscopic way, significant enough to harbor life within me. Company of people, company of friends, company of the loved ones. I feel it can make all the difference just to curb this feeling of loneliness. And I'm not sure if that's gonna work, because in many ways I already happen to have a lot of it already, and yet I feel lonely. that my thoughts are just circling around in a loop. And the simple urge to be able to share life's little insignificant moments began to take form of an avalanche. I do feel guilty in times like these to suddenly dismiss away all my thoughts just because they seem to make me feel not so comfortable in my own skin. And all the while, in doing so, I also feel that I'm undermining my own emotions. Emotions which, if I hadn't really bottled up, could have probably evolved and helped me better understand whether my loneliness really is just that or just me trying to battle with the entire urge of my own solitude. I tried to shift my focus anywhere. I began concentrating very hard on small details of my surroundings. Like the seams of my bag seemed to be slowly wearing out, so I tried to focus on that for a while, but not really helping me in any way. And then I began to fondle with the tips of my hair, an age old habit that I subconsciously resort to whenever I have to stop my mind from running amok. I tried focusing on other details, but they all seemed to be going in vain. So eventually I resigned. I resigned to fight the emotions and fight the feelings that I feel every now and then, and ever so often. And for once, I tried to take a new perspective to the whole thing. I tried to change the very definition of what loneliness is for me. Is it really just being alone in a crowded place? Or is it really just the feeling of not having anyone to share your emotions or feelings or moments with? I felt that loneliness in itself was too small to be defined in such a small cubicle form. And so I thought of solitude. What really does it mean? Is it really just me or my mind struggling to accept the idea of solitude? Something that I've often enjoyed, I must admit, but also probably not mature enough to handle it in its true essence. And that really surprised me because I haven't really given it much thought up till now. And I felt that the whole idea of solitude, loneliness, or even being alone in general just came in when I felt I was lacking something. But in reality, that wasn't really the case. Solitude was something that I really had enjoyed over the years. It was something that helped me ground myself. It was something that really put in different perspectives into my mind without overburdening my emotions. And so I thought that maybe it's not loneliness that I'm battling at all. It's the very idea of solitude, especially as the years go by, that I'm really trying to engulf, that I'm really trying to adapt to. Eventually, I felt that being lonely was especially challenging in an otherwise crowded world, and that had I been by myself, or maybe in solitude, I may just enjoy the feeling than get the urge to always fight it off. So maybe it is all about perspective after all.